So the United States Senate just convulsed, not with partisan theater, not with the usual Washington games, but with something we haven't seen in modern American politics, a fracture so complete, so public, that 12 Republican senators stood on the Senate floor and declared their president a national security threat. This is happening right now. Within 90 minutes of a classified intelligence briefing Tuesday morning, the Senate Majority Leader called an emergency session. By Tuesday afternoon, the chair of the Armed Services Committee was shaking, visibly shaking, as he read a prepared statement ending 30 years of Republican loyalty. By Tuesday night, the Senate Minority Whip had personally called 400 Republican donors to explain why the party's foundation just gave way. And then Warren Buffett spoke. The 94-year-old rarely comments on politics. He's built his entire reputation on measured, careful analysis. But on Wednesday morning, Buffett told CNBC that what's happening in Washington represents systemic risk to the American economy on par with the 2011 credit downgrade, except this time it's not about our ability to pay our debts. It's about whether our government can function at all. Hit subscribe right now because the world just changed. What happened publicly? Let me walk you through exactly what happened because the timeline matters. Monday night standard procedure. The Senate Intelligence Committee receives its weekly classified briefing. 16 senators, 8 from each party, gathered in the SCIF, the sensitive compartmented information facility beneath the Capitol. Standard stuff. Happens every week. Except this briefing wasn't standard. According to 3 sources with direct knowledge, the briefing focused on a single topic, a conversation between the president and a foreign leader. The classification level was TSACI, Top Secret Special Compartmented Information. That's the highest classification level in the U.S. government. That's nuclear codes territory. That's, if this gets out, people die territory. The briefing lasted 17 minutes. When those 16 senators emerged, sources say, they looked devastated. One Republican senator, a man who'd defended Trump through 2 impeachments, through January 6th, through everything, walked directly to the majority leader's office without saying a word to waiting press. Within 30 minutes, the majority leader had called 12 Republican senators to his office. Within 60 minutes, they'd agreed on a joint statement. Within 90 minutes, they were on the Senate floor. So that's what happened publicly. Behind closed doors, sources describe something close to institutional panic. Here's what we know from multiple sources corroborating the account. In that classified briefing, senators heard a recording, not a summary, not a transcript, an actual audio recording of the president speaking with a foreign head of state about NATO Article 5. The mutual defense provision that's kept the peace in Europe for 76 years. The president, according to sources in the briefing, told this foreign leader that Article 5 was negotiable, that the United States would not automatically defend NATO allies who didn't pay their fair share, that he was tired of protecting countries that laugh at us. One source described the recording as not a policy disagreement. It was the President of the United States unilaterally attempting to dissolve the most successful military alliance in human history without consulting Congress, without consulting the Pentagon, without consulting anyone. But here's where it gets worse. According to 2 sources, the intelligence community had been sitting on this recording for 6 days. They briefed the Secretary of Defense. They briefed the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. They briefed the National Security Advisor. And they were all told, reportedly, explicitly told, not to brief Congress. The president, sources say, wanted to announce the new NATO policy himself at a rally in Michigan on Thursday. He wanted it to be a campaign surprise, a tough guy moment for his base. The intelligence community made a call. They briefed Congress anyway. So Tuesday afternoon, those 12 Republican senators gathered on the Senate floor. The majority leader spoke first. He's 71 years old. He's been in the Senate for 24 years. He's defended Trump more times than anyone can count. His voice, sources say, was cold, precise. The voice of a man who'd made a decision he knew would end his political career but didn't care anymore. He said, and I'm quoting directly from the congressional record, the President of the United States has, without constitutional authority, without congressional consultation, and without regard for 76 years of American foreign policy, attempted to fundamentally alter our nation's most critical military alliance. This is not a policy dispute. This is a constitutional crisis. And every senator in this chamber must decide right now whether we serve the Constitution or we serve one man. Then the chair of the Armed Services Committee spoke. He's 68 years old, former Navy pilot, flew combat missions in Desert Storm. His hands, according to one aide who was present, were shaking as he gripped the podium. He said, I have spent my entire adult life in service to this country. I have defended this president for 8 years because I believed he shared my commitment to American strength. I was wrong. What I heard in that briefing this morning was not strength. It was weakness. It was cowardice. And it was a betrayal of every American service member who has ever worn the uniform. His voice cracked on the word betrayal. Then one by one, 10 more Republican senators stood and spoke, each one brief, each one devastating. Senator from Texas, I can no longer defend the indefensible. senator from South Carolina. This ends today, senator from Iowa. I took an oath to the Constitution, not to any individual. Inside the White House, multiple sources describe total chaos. The president, according to two senior officials, was in the residence when the Senate session began. He was watching Fox News. When the majority leader started speaking, the president reportedly started making calls. He called the Senate majority leader. No answer. He called the chair of the Armed Services Committee. No answer. He called the Senate Minority Whip. No answer. He called 12 Republican senators in rapid succession. Not one answered. By 4 p.m., according to sources, the president had made 30 phone calls and received 0 responses. One White House aide described the president as volcanic. Another said he was convinced this was an organized coup. A third said he spent 2 hours rage posting on social media, 17 posts in 2 hours, each one more unhinged than the last. But here's the detail that sources say reveals everything about the president's state of mind. At 6 p.m., the president called a hasty press conference in the Rose Garden. No prepared remarks, no teleprompter, just the president, visibly furious, shouting at reporters for 11 minutes. He called the 12 senators traitors and losers. He called the majority leader a weak, pathetic rhino. He claimed the recording was fake news manufactured by the deep state. And then, and multiple reporters confirmed this, he suggested he might declare a national emergency and suspend the Senate until they come to their senses. Constitutional scholars immediately pointed out that the president has no such authority. The Senate doesn't work for the president. The Senate is a co-equal branch of government, but the president, sources say, doesn't care about constitutional niceties. He cares about loyalty, and 12 of his supposedly loyal senators just burned that loyalty on live television. Which brings us to Warren Buffett. Wednesday morning, Buffett appeared on CNBC for a rare interview. He's 94 years old. He's lived through 14 presidents. He's seen the Cuban Missile Crisis, Watergate, the 2008 financial collapse, everything. And he said this was different. Markets, Buffett explained, can price in a lot of uncertainty. We've priced in recessions, wars, political transitions. But what we're seeing now is not policy uncertainty. It's institutional uncertainty. The question markets are asking is, can the United States government function as a coherent entity? He continued. When the president attempts to unilaterally reshape NATO without congressional authority, and when a third of his own party publicly breaks with him over it, that sends a signal to every bondholder, every currency trader, every foreign investor. The signal is, American political stability is no longer a given. And if American political stability isn't a given, then the dollar as the global reserve currency isn't a given. And if the dollar isn't a given, then everything reprices. He paused, then delivered the line that sent markets into a tailspin. I've lived through a lot, but I've never seen the political scaffolding of American power fracture like this. And scaffolding doesn't repair itself. It either gets rebuilt or the whole structure comes down. By market close Wednesday, the Dow had dropped 740 points. The S&P was down 3.2%. 10-year Treasury yields jumped 18 basis points, the largest single-day move in 8 months. So here's where we are. In the Senate, 12 Republican senators have publicly broken with the president over national security. The majority leader has called for hearings on presidential authority over military alliances. 3 committees have launched investigations into who ordered the intelligence community not to brief Congress. In the White House, total institutional isolation. Republican senators won't return calls. Republican donors are reportedly pulling back on major contributions. One major donor told Bloomberg, "I didn't sign up to destroy NATO. I signed up for tax cuts." In European capitals, according to diplomatic sources, NATO ambassadors held an emergency meeting Wednesday night. The question wasn't whether the U.S. commitment to Article 5 is solid. After the president's recording, they know it isn't. The question is, what does European security look like without American leadership? In financial markets, the repricing Buffett warned about has begun. Currency traders are moving out of long-term dollar positions. Bond markets are demanding higher yields to compensate for political risk. Goldman Sachs reportedly circulated an internal memo titled Systemic Political Risk Reassessment. Among Republican voters, early polling shows a 7-point drop in the president's approval among Republicans in just 48 hours. 7 points in 2 days. That's unprecedented volatility in a base that's been rock solid for 8 years. But here's what we don't know yet. Will more senators break? 12 have gone public. According to multiple sources, at least 6 more are on the edge. If it reaches 18, a third of the Republican caucus, this becomes a full-scale party revolt. What does the president do next? His entire political brand is built on strength, on dominance, on never backing down. But 12 senators just publicly called him a constitutional threat, and he couldn't stop them. Does he escalate? Does he try to primary all 12? Does he actually attempt some kind of emergency executive action? What do markets do if this continues? Buffett's warning about repricing wasn't theoretical. If political dysfunction continues, if the Senate-White House relationship completely breaks down, if NATO starts operating without assuming American leadership, what happens to Treasury bonds? bonds? What happens to the dollar? And most importantly, can this be walked back? Political fractures this deep don't usually heal. Once 12 senators have publicly declared the president a national security threat, how do they ever support him again? How does the Republican Party function when a third of its Senate caucus is at war with its own president? So that's what happened. A classified briefing on Tuesday morning revealed the president attempting to unilaterally reshape NATO. 12 Republican senators broke publicly within 90 minutes. The White House descended into panic. Warren Buffett warned of systemic economic risk. Markets repriced political stability, and the Republican Party fractured in ways we haven't seen in modern politics. Keep watching, because what happened this week isn't ending, it's just beginning.